Hello, welcome to my talk, Robotics for the New Educational Fluency. My name is Illah Nourbakhsh. I'm at Carnegie Mellon University at the Create Lab. And I hope to make this informal, so I'll try and get through my slides and leave lots of time for you to ask questions. Farid actually set this up beautifully this morning because he pointed out the fact that technology is changing at an ever-increasing pace of change. And what that means is we can't simply train our children for today's technology, because by the time they graduate, that technology is a fossil. So the question that you can ask yourselves is, how do we prepare children for a future that we're uncertain of, in a climate, in a time when we know crisis is paramount, when we know there's major climate change, we know that technology is relevant to just about any job type that they're going to have. And this talk is a little bit about some insights into ways we've been doing this across several states in America, and hopefully we'll be going more global soon. Now, our answer is to think not in terms of technology literacy, not in terms of teaching people how to use and consume technology, which is what we so often do when we use a device like an iPad, but rather to think about people as becoming technologically fluent. Technology fluency is not a term that I invented. It's an important term that exists in the literature now from the National Academies of Science. And it relates to the concept that people are learning to take existing knowledge and invent new knowledge with it, to invent the new from the old. And that's, in this case, what we mean by technology fluency and data fluency. And by the way, data and technology are two very important parts of the future we face. Our recipe for dealing with this problem of creating technology fluency in the classroom involves three skills that we believe are core skills for the future. One, inquiry. Can we use technology as a looking glass to enable children to understand how they should inquire about the world around them in an Aristotelian sense, how they can be always full of questions about what they see around them. Two, innovation. Can we use technology as a platform with which they innovate and invent the new from the old? And three, narrative. It's not enough in today's society to learn how to invent for invention's sake alone. Making a key fob on a 3D printer teaches you nothing at all. What you need is innovation in the service of a strong narrative. That means you have to have an emotional bond. You have to care about what you're doing. You have to know why socially it's important to be what you're doing. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the time is show you a number of projects from our lab going up the cognitive pipeline that are examples that take 2 or 3 of these ideas and try and rethink what it means to have technology in a classroom in service of these. And by the way, the first project starts with 4-year-olds. And the reason for that is we need to overcome the biases that exist in society. And those biases exist across the border of gender and across the border of wealth and existing knowledge that parents have. So we start with the very young, and this project, the Children's Innovation Project, does just that. I've distributed some stuff on the table, so let me give you a sense of what I've done. Instead of making children consumers of existing shrink-wrap technology, we believe you have to start at the 4 to 7-year-old age by showing children how technology is a raw material in the craft of invention and inquiry, just the way crayons and paper are raw material in the craft of art and expression. And we don't do enough of that. So in this case, what you have in front of you, if you're sitting near the fronts, is something called Children's Innovation Project. It's a set of simple wooden blocks. Each one has a discrete electronic component on it. But what's important about this, other than the fact that we can fabricate this anywhere in the world cheaply, is that it's wooden-grained. The children spend the first few weeks simply drawing these and feeling them as 4-year-olds and writing in a diary about them. Then they start playing with the circuits, with the alligator clips. Oh, thank you. You got it to light up. And it won't light up if you reverse it, which is interesting. So we teach children about LEDs. But the most important part of this project is really teacher innovation. The professional development is paramount. We teach the teachers at this age level to stop giving answers. In fact, to never give answers, to only ask questions, to slow the children down. This is very, very similar to Project Zero at Harvard. In fact, we collaborate some with them. The fundamental idea is teach them inquiry for inquiry's sake, learning to learn, not learning to succeed at a specific mission. And the results we've had from this have been outstanding. I'll give you one simple example. At the end of each year, we have a parent workshop where the parents come in and the children teach them. By then, the children have developed their own language in class for cause and effect, sensors, actuators, parallel and series circuits. And the parents come and watch the children describe to them how simple toys from a Goodwill store work. And what's better, the children take the toys apart with care and can point inside and, oh, there's a potentiometer. And there's an LED. Oh, and there's a simple diode, and that must be the microprocessor. And then using the alligator clips, they clip into the existing electronic circuitry in the toy and make a new toy. So now they're learning to reformulate, and that's true innovation. That's just one example of the kind of project you can do with inexpensive parts if you devote yourself to professional development. Slow the teachers down and make it much more open-ended. For those of you interested in that, I have a 35-minute documentary on it that a friend of mine from Nova made, which really explains to you how it works. Now, I'm going to skip to middle school for another project that we have that's for a bit older, because one of the powers that robotics has, robotics actually can change the game a little bit in how teachers think about their role in the classroom. And there's two particular things that I find very powerful about robotics. And maybe this starts to show that off, because on the left side, you have beautiful craft. On the right side, you have complicated gears and motors and wires. Robotics has this power of being trans-disciplinary. And we push that full tilt, and I'll explain how. It also has the power of doing what we call talent finding. And this project, called Arts and Bots, as in arts and robots, is one in which we have a kit that allows any classroom to take arts and craft materials and build sculptural artifacts, anything they want out of three-dimensional materials. It can be wood, it can be cardboard, it can be 3D printed. But this roboticizes it. In other words, once they've built it, now it can dance, sing, talk, light up, and move. So this connects it to a computer and enables to program it. This choreography that they then do means that it affords the opportunity to use sculpture in a robotic way as an article of expression, to be expressive. Now, first of all, we do professional development around this, not in a technology program or in a computer science laboratory. It's designed to be used in all the other disciplines. So we have something like 15,000 students using that now across the United States. They do it in art class, in poetry class, English class, history class, even physical education. For instance, in art class, they build robots after they read a poem. I'm sorry, in poetry class. They read the poem, like Edgar Allan Poe, Valley of the Shadows, and then the challenge is build a kinetic sculpture that represents Valley of the Shadows. Now the kids have to do what? They have to read it 50 more times to figure out, what am I building? That means they understand the poem more deeply than they ever did before. And the teachers have reported this to us. What's more, in the process of building it, different students shine at different parts of the process. Some are design thinkers. Some care deeply about the way the robot looks. Some care about the interpretation of the poem. So we teach the teachers to use this project as a looking glass to identify the talents in every student in the classroom, instead of just in the top to 10% so-called talented students, and then to nurture them by giving them more design thinking skills, or more art skills, or more expression and rhetoric skills. So again, simple craft materials because they're easily consumed, because you don't create a divide with craft materials. Every child in middle school is already familiar with them and happy to start using them. Yet, by adding choreography to that, you change the power relationship between technology and the disciplinary enthusiast. Because now they see technology not as a challenging other class, but as an expressive tool I can use in any class I have. I have one other quick example for you. In physical education class, we have a number of places where they now build anatomically correct models of the arm and look at the insertion points of muscles by moving them around and then actuating them with the motors in this kit. What's interesting about that is the physical education teacher, for the first time, is using technology immensely deeply. And we had one who went to the National Science Foundation with us to report on this. And it's powerful. The teacher says this was his dream come true, to be in a position where he feels like he's doing research in the classroom, using technology to teach them why they need to exercise in the right ways, why they need to stretch after exercise. So this gives you a sense of inquiry and innovation, but I want to talk about narrative. The way we try and attack narrative is by creating technology artifacts that can create chances for innovation in a place that actually matters to children. And one obvious place is air pollution. This is a picture of a project we have in Uganda with solar-powered smoke extraction in Bukomansimbi. What's powerful about air pollution is that it has relevance to every home in all of the world. We have something like 25% of the child's population in the world has asthma, which means if you're in school, you have a sister or a brother who coughs at night. And wouldn't it be wonderful if the teaching you're doing about biology and physics actually included the chance to make her cough less at night? So we do this, and we have a program called the SPEC, a simple device that we now mass manufacture for precisely this purpose. It has an easy screen on it, so it shows you the air pollution levels, PM 2.5, so 0.5 to 2.5 micron of particles in the air. But it's very, very easy to use and appropriate for school use. So what we do with the SPEC, we provide it to the schools and show them how they can do project-based learning with it. I'll give you one quick example of a project that the SPEC was used for because it's such a powerful example. In Salt Lake City, Utah, in a middle school, 4th grade, that's 10-year-olds, they took the specs and put them in the classroom alongside the road where the parents pick up the children at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when school's over. And they measured the air quality in those classrooms. Then the children took out tablets and counted how many parents idle their cars at 3 o'clock at pickup time. Then they studied the physiology of smoke. They studied what particle sizes come out of the exhaust of a car during idling. And they studied asthma and the biology of how asthma is triggered by particles in the air. Then the students together designed, these are 10-year-olds, mind you, a pledge sheet, an anti-idling pledge sheet. Then they all went home and called meetings with their families. They had family meetings and sat their parents down and lectured them on the dangers of idling and the result of idling on child health. Then they had their parents sign a pledge form, brought the pledge form back to school. Then they waited 2 weeks and again counted how many cars are idling, again measured the particulate loading in the air with the spec, and then, this is the best part maybe, high school student came in, taught them how to do P and T tests, and calculate the statistical significance of the result they got. And it was significant, P better than 0.05. So the students have done what? They have learned about biology. They've learned about statistics. They've learned how to use a scientific instrument to make an invisible thing visible. But they've done much more than that. They've learned how the act of doing science, combined with social engineering, can make the world around them literally better. So it's a complete closed loop, and that's what I mean by narrative. So we find it incredibly impactful to use true narrative. Now, making the invisible visible with this kind of device extends to other kinds of devices as well. We invented a device called the Gigapan a few years ago that we now use globally. The Gigapan is a simple robot that any cheap small camera fits on. But what it does with that small camera is it takes hundreds of pictures and rotates very slowly. And because it uses hundreds of pictures with a known motion control system for the camera, it can stitch them together into one giant seamless image that has 1 billion pixels. Now, this is a picture from Trinidad, where a girls' school uses it to start to capture biodiversity. But when you capture biodiversity this way, you develop a new kind of eye. You see, they can take a picture of a local forest that looks like this. Then they can go back home and zoom in the laboratory at school in that picture, because it has 1 billion pixels, and they can count every spider in the picture. So they can do a biodiversity assay after the fact. And later, they can decide we want to count leaf foliage, so they can zoom in and count all the leaf foliage patterns on the ground as well. So you've created a document that's an image, but it's an interactive image, made by the children and then used by the children to do a bit of science. By a bit, I mean a bite of science. So what's happening here is the tool is documentary and scientific, and yet it has very clear sense of purpose. The same exact tool we use for what we call global connections, taking images of culturally important artifacts and sharing them across the globe between schools. So in this case, children take a picture of a mural in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, a very famous mural that includes Martin Luther King and others, Malcolm X, and then they zoom in and annotate it with high levels of density. And they share the annotations with children in other schools in other parts of the world. So it's like a writing program on steroids, using the image as a spatial way to organize annotations and communication practice. So that's just another example of how you can take the invisible and make it visible. Have the children do that act of making it visible. Use technology as nothing but a looking glass. And the lesson becomes essentially about communication and humanity, rather than about technology as an end in itself. Now, I have 2 more quick examples for you, and then I'll take some questions. And my last 2 examples, again, are about the invisible to the visible, but in kind of odd ways that aren't obvious to think of. One of them is called Message from Me. One of the things that's invisible to parents is what their children did at school all day. And this is a problem, because the highly motivated parent who does ask the child, "What did you do today?" and talks to them about that around the dinner table has far, far better outcomes in terms of learning than the parent who does not do that. And I myself was a parent who had children to whom I said, "What did you do today?" And they said, "Nothing." I said, "No, really, what did you do today?" "I don't remember." So we wanted to use technology, but again, not to distance you from the people. There's this joke, there was an AnyConnect system that Cisco made at one point where they were testing it at Google in the preschool. They just set it up so that parents could basically look at their children in school in real time. Useless. Useless because it's not generating conversation, it's not topical, it's simply a surveillance system. So in this case, we want to empower children to be the documentary makers, just like with Gigapan, just like with Arts and Bots. So what we did is we made a very, very simple web infrastructure that's authenticated, that allows a school to set up all the parents and all of their preferred ways to be contacted. Now, a lot of schools email the parents about what they did that day. That doesn't work. That increases the inequity gap we have, because all the poverty-stricken parents have no email all day. So it's useless. But what do they have? A phone. So this application is as simple as this. Pictures of the students are on it. They choose themselves. A set of recipients show up that are the recipients that have been organized for them by their teacher. They choose as many as they want, mom and dad. Then they take a picture of what they're doing that day. They literally take a picture. I'm giving a talk today. And when they confirm the picture, then it prompts them to talk. So they leave a message. Hi, I'm giving a talk right now. Now, this is the magic part. When they send that, the audio and the image are MMS encoded and put it in SMS and sent to the smartphone of the parents. Smartphone, because that's how you reach everybody. And because it's that simple to use, we can create outstanding professional development around it so that teachers understand which learning moments are appropriate to interrupt and allow the children to use this device to create documentation. Because the children are creating the documentation rather than the teachers, the children have a sense of personal entitlement and empowerment. And I have a favorite story about that, which is actually in many of the studies we do, we ask the parents what impact it has. We had a mother in talking about her child using this, and she actually came to tears. What she said is that her husband loves their son very much, but the interaction pattern that the husband had with the son was literally one of roughhousing. They wrestle. And she always wished they would have conversations, and they didn't. And he started getting these. And dinner turned into conversations about what they were doing that day. And she says that the interaction between the child and the father completely changed over the course of a few weeks, where now they have long, extended conversations, same-age child. That's the kind of result we're looking for. That's the kind of result where you're changing the relationship between a parent and a child through something the child themselves is doing. I'll give you one other quick example because it's too much fun. Some children hijack this very, very well. So they'll log in, take a picture of their friend, and send it to their friend's mother and say, hi, I'm Johnny, and I'm your son Bob's friend, and we want a play date. Can you please contact my mother? Which is pretty cool. It's like a communication system that's allowing them to hijack the communication express. Last example I'll give you, because you're going to start thinking everything we do is at the lower school and middle school levels, is Hear Me. And then we'll take some questions and comments and interactions. Hear Me is a project which, again, says let's make the invisible visible. And let's, again, do it highly topically. So we pick themes that are absolutely critical to a particular school district. So, for instance, we've done a major one on the fact that there's not enough textbooks in central Pennsylvania to serve the needs of children. And on that theme, we have the children create audio messages to decision makers in government. And then those audio messages are embedded in these tin cans. So they become tangible. And the tin cans are sent from school to school so that children can listen to each other's messages, and they're sent to legislators, and they listen to them before they vote on bills. Really, we actually do this. And we create kiosks in restaurants and cafes so that everybody can hear the children's own voice. This is interesting because by boosting the voice of children, you show them how to create new media, but you also place with them the responsibility of creating media that they truly care about, around issues of great importance to them. The most recent one we did is on youth-police relations. We have major issues around police and community relationships in America, as you can gather. And we have children who are doing an outstanding job in high school telling the story of the complex relationship they already have with police and what they would like to see in the future in lieu of the relationship they face today. So again, everything you see is deceptively simple. The tools are made so they can scale without extreme costs. The trick is professional development. It's about providing the right support to the teachers. We do that by partnering with schools of education. So we never go to a school and give them anything shrink-wrapped. We bring the teachers in with the school of education, whether pre-service or in-service, and give them enough of an intuition for the technology that they can design their own rubrics, they can design their own curricula, and then they feel empowered by it rather than being forced upon by it. So, general idea, let's make our children fluent with technology. Let's stop making it irrelevant to their lives. Rather, let's maximize the relevance that the technology has to their true lives. And in doing that, I believe we'll make a generation that decide on our future that is more broad, more women, more artistic, more creative, more rhetorically compelling. That's what we really need if we want the world to become a better place. So with that, I'm happy to take questions or comments. Is there a microphone? Yes. Go ahead and introduce yourself when you're speaking.
Hi, I'm from China. My name is Ed, and I'm also doing a lot of science stuff, but yours is very inspirational.
Thank you.
So my question is really one question, but two parts. Hearing how you implement robotics, this artificial intelligence, into simple, doable thing. I really wanted to imitate, because I'm doing a lot of complicated things, but hearing you, simple, very good. So I want to do it too. And so the number one question is, how can I do it? How can I ask you to help us to do it from a small group, maybe even start from my family, for example?
Absolutely.
So that's number one question. Then number two question is, I'm thinking ahead. Have you have any problems or troubles in kicking off small project like this? You know, the kids may get frustrated or something like that, so I can learn more from you. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent questions. So first of all, how to start. What we do to try and make this as accessible as possible, I'm an open source lab. At the same time, we spin off companies for every one of these just to be able to manufacture enough to meet demand. So we have a small company manufacturing these in Pittsburgh, but they can be made anywhere. We've set up a shop that can manufacture them in India and one in America. This is an existing programmable robot for high school that works extremely well, and it's being manufactured, as is this, and this is a free app on the App Store. So we do create accessibility to the physical hardware as much as possible. And the curriculum that we do have is online. But the way to begin is really to pick one project, to pick one target age first, and simply work directly with our education schools. So we would pick one school of education in our network. We have a Create Lab satellite network. We would partner one school of education with you, establish scope around one project, and I have always found if you start slow and small, rather than trying to do everything at once, it's the best way to succeed, because we'll make mistakes at first, and because we have to understand culturally and contextually how to be able to take what we do and empower you to change it for your culture, for your local context. So we have to go slowly. Have I had successes and failures? Sure, we've had plenty of failures. I've been doing this for 20 years. By and large, though, by empowering the local administration and the local school system and teachers, and really getting buy-in from the administration, we create space for them to experiment. We've gone so far as to actually convince school districts to buy release time first, so that the teachers that do this get 3 hours a week just to spend together collaborating on a multidisciplinary project. So we'll sometimes insist on a structural change like that, where we think without that structural change, this will be siloed into one class, and it will fail to have the kind of ramifications you want.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Long walk.
Hi, my name is Samuel from Abu Dhabi, our ADIC STEM. You talked about buying in and getting the administration and schools to buy in. Now, you have curriculum in your websites. Do you have or have you created any opportunity for data to be collected to show learning, to show progress amongst the school, or is that used or taking part the administrative responsibility for that to gather the data, or because you have an opportunity for them to create their own curriculum within the program?
You're actually yes to both questions, and let me repeat the question in case people didn't hear it. The question is, basically, do we have outcomes? Do we measure outcomes in a way that helps convince administrators? The second part of the question is that up to the schools? It is largely up to the schools. In some programs, when we get enough funding, such as the Children's Innovation Project and the Arts and Bots program, Creative Robotics, we got major funding from the National Science Foundation to develop a rubric and evaluation instruments around that. So we give those to schools freely. We also have used those to publish papers on that project, and in that project, the outcomes that were interesting were statistically significant in the area of bridging gender gaps, in the area of increasing knowledge about robotics and technology in general, and increasing people's sense of the role of technology in their career future, no matter what career they go into. Having said that, I'm very wary of quantitative outcomes. So we do a number of qualitative outcome evaluations, where we videotape, where we observe microgenetic social interaction in the schoolroom, and we interview teachers and create long format interviews, trying to understand from them, has this empowered them and how has this empowered them? We have seen schools that have to do, essentially by law, some kind of quantitative measurement, and they take that on themselves, and we provide evaluation instruments as we can. But it's unaffordable for us to do it across all deployments. In fact, some of these that have gone commercial now have gone somewhat viral, so they're being sold much faster than we can even keep track of who's using them. So we'll see people come back to us with questions that we didn't know were using them in parts of the world we didn't know about. Outcomes is challenging. You want to have good outcomes, but there are so many unbelievable cases of hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into something on an outcomes basis and then not yielding the result that you extrapolated from the early work, that I believe it's so important to understand culturally on the ground, is it actually working, in the views of the people who matter most. We do, by the way, literally bring in superintendents, principals, and provosts and have them build robots, because we have a 3-hour course in which they can build their first robot ever with arts and crafts material with the teachers. And that usually converts them. It changes their whole mindset about the age levels across which we can actually have robotics infused in disciplinary classrooms. Because then they realize, oh, my history teacher can do this. And that's a very freeing thing. Yes. That app is called Message from Me. Message from Me.
Message from me.
Now, for that app to work today, it uses a service to send messages over 3G in America. Because it's an electronic device on Wi-Fi, it doesn't have a cellular chip in it, or I'd have to pay $40 a month. So to get it to work in a place like Abu Dhabi, we would need Ericsson or somebody here to allow us to do that part for free,
Okay.
just like we do in the US. So there's a country-by-country problem there, which is negotiating cellular service of some kind.
So can we use it if we get that app or something like that?
Yes, if you contact me, I'm very happy to help you get the permissions here set up. If you can get the permissions, I'm happy to have Message from Me used here, yes.
Then the other things which you showed,
Yes.
is it applicable? Is there any age groups for those things to be done?
Yeah, Children's Innovation Project, the wood blocks, are in use from pre-kindergarten till 4th grade in America right now, in the Pittsburgh area. Message from Me is particularly powerful in pre-K and kindergarten. They've been doing some pre-K to kindergarten transition work with it, which is quite interesting in some schools. Having the child in pre-K send messages to the kindergarten teacher they'll have next year. And that's interesting because there's some emotional challenges kids have sometimes transitioning to kindergarten in America. So that can overcome that to some degree. The Finch is typically used in middle school with Scratch and Snap, graphical programming languages, or in high school with about 20 different programming languages, from Bluefoot to IPython Notebook to C, Java, C++. Spec works across all age groups as a device for inquiry.
Okay, thank you.
You guys tell us when to stop.
Hi, my name is Anisha and I work with the Times of India. First of all, fantastic technology, I must say. I'm talking about the situation globally. You've been implementing this technology in America, but do you think that if it's sent out to the world, do you think they'll adapt to it easily? And locally also in the US, did you find it difficult to convince schools to take it on their curriculum, or was it easy?
We found it very difficult for schools to take on originally, because originally we didn't go through schools of education. Probably for 3 years we worked with individual schools as if we were the educator trainer. And a friend of mine who runs the Association for Young Children in America, she introduced me to our first school of education. And that changed the game for us completely, because it was a model for sustainable scaling. We work in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. West Virginia is the poorest state in the country. Many of the counties we work in have no hotels. There is no hotel. There are no jobs. And they have 98% free and reduced lunch programs. That means 98% of the children live below the poverty line. So we have remarkable poverty and lack of access to resources, and yet we're deploying there. So because of that extrema, I'm pretty confident that given we can do this in Pittsburgh and we can do it in West Virginia, that there's a set of places around the world that this can be useful. Localization we have not done. So language localization is something we've never done. But in the case of systems like Message for Me, it's audio files and image GIFs. So it's actually quite possible to do that in a straightforward way. Altogether, we serve about 25,000 students right now across several hundred schools. Each of these individually is in anywhere from 10 to 100 or to 200 schools. That would be our dream. We need to, given what's worked so far, I think the right way to do it is to find pre-service or in-service professional development organizations in India and then provide this to them and have them be one of our satellite network members. We're definitely out of time, so let me thank you all for coming.